I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there for months. The way my husband Derek started taking every phone call from his mother in private, the way he'd grown increasingly critical of everything I did around the house, the way he'd begun treating me more like a roommate than a wife. But I'd been so buried in my work, so focused on building my consulting business, that I'd missed the warning signals until it was almost too late. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I just finished a video call with a client in Singapore. My international consulting work meant I often worked odd hours, and I was looking forward to a quiet dinner with Derek. We'd been married for 3 years, and while we'd had our rough patches, I thought we were working through them. I found Derek in the living room of our beautiful Victorian home, sitting stiffly on the couch with his phone in his hands. He looked up when I entered, and something in his expression made my stomach clench with dread. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold and formal in a way I'd never heard before. "Okay," I said slowly, settling into the armchair across from him. "What's going on?" "I've been thinking about our situation," Derek began, not quite meeting my eyes. "About our marriage, about the future, about what's best for everyone involved." A chill ran down my spine. "Derek, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" "My mother is having some health issues," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "She needs someone to take care of her, and she can't afford assisted living on her fixed income." I nodded, feeling a mixture of concern and confusion. "Of course we'll help her. We can look into having a caregiver come to her apartment, or maybe we can help with the cost of a nice facility." Derek shook his head. "That's not going to work. She needs family support, not strangers." "Then she can move in with us," I said immediately. "We have the guest room and I work from home most days, so I could help keep an eye on her." For a moment, something flickered across Derek's face. Surprise, maybe even gratitude. But then his expression hardened again. "That's not what we've decided," he said. "We?" I asked. "Who is we?" Before Derek could answer, I heard the sound of footsteps on our front porch, followed by the distinctive jingle of keys. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. The front door opened and Margaret Wells, Derek's mother, walked into our living room like she owned the place. She was carrying 2 large suitcases and wearing the self-satisfied smile I'd learned to dread over the years. "Hello, dear," she said to Derek, completely ignoring me. "I'm so glad we can finally move forward with our plans." "What plans?" I asked, though I was beginning to have a terrible suspicion about the answer. Derek stood up, his posture stiff and defensive. "Mom is moving in. Permanently." "Okay," I said carefully. "We can make that work. The guest room will need some modifications for accessibility, but—" "You're not understanding," Derek interrupted. "Mom is moving into the master bedroom. She needs the space and the attached bathroom." I stared at him in disbelief. "Where exactly am I supposed to sleep?" Margaret finally acknowledged my presence, her pale blue eyes cold as winter ice. "That's what we need to discuss," she said with false sweetness. "Derek and I have been talking, and we both agree that this arrangement isn't working out." "What arrangement?" I asked, though I was starting to understand with horrible clarity. Derek took a deep breath, like he was steeling himself for something unpleasant. "Our marriage. It's not working, Amanda. We want different things, we have different priorities. It's better if we end this now before we waste any more time." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You want a divorce?" "It's for the best," Margaret said before Derek could answer. "You're clearly not happy here, dear. You work all the time, you never cook anymore, you're always on those video calls with your foreign clients. This isn't the life Derek deserves." I looked back and forth between them, seeing the way they stood together, united against me. The way Margaret's hand rested possessively on Derek's arm. The way Derek avoided meeting my eyes. "When did you two plan this?" I asked quietly. "We've been discussing it for a few weeks," Derek admitted. "Mom pointed out some things about our relationship that I hadn't really noticed before." "Like what?" Margaret smiled that cold smile again. "Like how you've changed since you started that little business of yours. You used to be such a sweet, attentive wife. Now you're always working, always traveling, always putting your career before your family." "My work pays for half our expenses," I said, my voice beginning to rise despite my efforts to stay calm. "Including the mortgage on this house." "A house that's too big for a young couple anyway," Margaret said dismissively. "Derek would be much happier in a smaller place, something more manageable." I turned to Derek, searching his face for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. "Is this really what you want?" You want me to pack up and leave so your mother can move in? Derek finally met my eyes, and what I saw there broke my heart. Guilt, yes, but also a kind of resolute determination. Pack your bags tonight, he said, his voice steady. My mother's moving in and you're moving out. Margaret's smirk was unmistakable as she stood there in the doorway, clearly savoring her victory. Don't worry, dear, she said to me with mock concern. I'm sure you'll find somewhere to go. Maybe one of those foreign clients of yours can put you up. For a moment I just stood there, stunned by the cruelty of it all. Then something inside me shifted, not breaking but hardening into something sharp and focused. I walked calmly to my purse, which was sitting on the side table by the entrance. Derek and Margaret watched me with confused expressions, probably expecting tears or arguments or desperate pleas. Instead, I pulled out a manila folder that I'd been carrying around for the past week, waiting for the right moment to share its contents with Derek. I'd been planning it as a surprise, a celebration of how far my business had come. Actually, I said, my voice perfectly steady, you both are moving out. Their faces went blank with confusion. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a property deed with official seals and signatures. This house doesn't belong to Derek, I said calmly. It belongs to me. Derek's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? We bought this house together. Both our names are on the mortgage. We're on the mortgage, I corrected. I paid it off 6 months ago. The bank sent the deed to my business address because that's where I handle all my financial matters. I handed him the document. His hands were shaking as he read it, his face going progressively paler. This can't be right, Margaret said, snatching the deed from Derek's hands. Houses cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. She's just a freelance consultant. Actually, I said, pulling out another document, I'm the CEO and majority owner of Meridian Strategic Consulting. We specialize in international market expansion for technology companies. I handed her our most recent quarterly report. We had revenues of $3.2 million last quarter. I've been reinvesting most of the profits back into the business, but I kept enough aside to pay off our mortgage as a surprise for Derek. Derek stared at the report like it was written in a foreign language. $3 million? In 3 months. The tech industry is booming, I explained. Companies are desperate to expand into Asian and European markets, but they don't understand the cultural and regulatory differences. That's where my firm comes in. Margaret was scanning the financial documents with growing alarm. This has to be fake. She works from home in her pajamas. I work from home because I have clients in 12 different time zones, I said patiently. Do you know what time it is in Seoul right now? Or Mumbai? Or London? I take calls at all hours because that's what international business requires. I pulled out my phone and showed them my calendar. Tomorrow I have a video conference with a company in Tokyo at 6 a.m., a call with clients in Frankfurt at 2 p.m., and a strategy session with a startup in Tel Aviv at 9 p.m. That's just Tuesday. Derek was still staring at the financial documents. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? I tried, I said, and for the first time, a note of sadness crept into my voice. Remember 6 months ago when I said I had exciting news about a major client signing a long-term contract? You said you were too tired to talk about work. Remember when I mentioned that I was thinking about hiring additional staff? You said I was getting ahead of myself. The truth was hitting him now. I could see it in his expression. The business trips you've been taking. Client meetings. Site visits. Contract negotiations. I've been building something real, Derek. Something substantial. I gestured around our beautifully appointed living room. You think I bought this furniture with pocket change? You think I've been paying for our vacations with credit cards? Margaret was frantically flipping through the financial documents. Even if this is real, you can't just kick us out. Derek has rights as your husband. Actually, I said, pulling out yet another document, he doesn't. I had our lawyer draw up a postnuptial agreement after I paid off the mortgage. Derek signed it without reading it carefully. He said he trusted me to handle the boring financial stuff. Derek's face went white. What does it say? It says that in the event of separation or divorce, the house remains solely my property since I purchased it outright with my business income. You'll get half of our other marital assets, but the house itself is mine. I handed him the agreement, watching as he recognized his own signature at the bottom. You signed this 3 weeks ago, Derek. Right after you mentioned that your mother was having financial difficulties. The implication hung in the air between us. Derek's mother had been planning this takeover for weeks, maybe months, and Derek had unknowingly signed away any claim to the house while cooperating with her scheme. "This is ridiculous," Margaret sputtered. "Derek, you can't let her do this to us. We had plans." "What plans exactly?" I asked, my voice sharp for the first time. "Were you planning to sell my house to fund your retirement? Were you hoping Derek would divorce me and give you half the proceeds?" Margaret's guilty expression told me everything I needed to know. I turned back to Derek, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "How long has this been going on? How long have you and your mother been planning to get rid of me?" "It's not like that," Derek said weakly. "Mom was just pointing out that we might be incompatible, that maybe we rushed into marriage too quickly." "We dated for 4 years before we got married," I reminded him. "And we've been married for 3 more. When exactly did you decide I wasn't good enough for you? When you stopped being a wife and started being a workaholic?" Margaret snapped, apparently deciding that subtlety was no longer necessary. "When you stopped cooking dinner and started ordering takeout. When you stopped asking Derek about his day and started talking about your clients instead." I stared at her in amazement. "I stopped cooking because I'm working 12-hour days building a business that supports both Derek and me. I order takeout because I don't have time to grocery shop and meal prep when I'm managing clients across 4 continents. And I talk about my work because it's interesting and challenging and successful." "Success," Margaret said with disdain. "You think money makes you successful? You think having clients in foreign countries makes you important?" "I think building something from nothing makes me successful," I replied. "I think creating jobs and helping companies grow makes me important. I think being able to pay off a mortgage in full makes me a good wife." Derek was looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Amanda, I had no idea about any of this. The business, the money, the house being paid off. Why didn't you share this with me?" "Because every time I tried to share good news about my work, it was dismissed as unimportant," I said. "Because every time I mentioned a success or an achievement, you changed the subject or made it clear you weren't interested." "That's not true," Derek protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really? When Global Tech offered me $1 million consulting contract, what did you say?" Derek's face went red. I said you should be careful about taking on too much. When Innovation Weekly wanted to feature me in their Women Entrepreneurs to Watch section, what was your response?" I said I hoped it wouldn't go to your head. "And when I mentioned that I was thinking about expanding into South American markets, you said what?" Derek couldn't meet my eyes. I said maybe you should focus on being present in your actual marriage instead of chasing imaginary opportunities. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret looked like she was about to explode. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear, and I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. "I need both of you to leave," I said quietly. "Tonight." "You can't be serious," Margaret said. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore," I replied. "Derek, you can stay in a hotel while you look for an apartment. Margaret, I suggest you find a senior living community that actually suits your needs and budget." "Amanda, please," Derek said, his voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard before. "Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something out." I looked at the man I'd thought I'd spend my life with, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. "Work what out, Derek? You just told me you want a divorce. You've spent months planning to kick me out of my own house. Your mother has been systematically undermining our marriage and you've been helping her do it. I didn't know about the house, about your business being so successful," he said desperately. If you'd known I was wealthy, you would have treated me differently?" I asked. "That's supposed to make me feel better." Margaret was gathering her suitcases with sharp, angry movements. "This isn't over," she said to me. "Derek, you're making a huge mistake. She's manipulated you, hidden things from you. What kind of wife keeps secrets like this? The kind who learns not to share good news because it's consistently dismissed and minimized," I said. "The kind who protects her assets because she's not sure she can trust her husband's judgment." Derek was still standing there, looking lost and confused. "What happens now?" I pulled out one final document from my folder. "I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers tomorrow morning. The house, as we've established, is mine. Our other assets will be divided according to state law." "You filed for divorce?" Derek's voice was barely a whisper. "When?" "Last week. After I overheard you and your mother planning this conversation on the phone." I saw the shock on his face and felt a twinge of satisfaction. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You were discussing it in our kitchen while I was working upstairs. Margaret's face was purple with rage. You little snake. You've been planning this whole thing. I've been protecting myself, I corrected. Just like you've been planning to steal my house and destroy my marriage. I walked to the front door and opened it. Both of you need to leave. No. Derek, you can come back tomorrow with a moving truck to get your personal belongings, but only with advance notice and only when I'm here to supervise. Derek walked slowly toward the door, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As he passed me, he stopped. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't realize. I didn't understand what you'd built. No, I agreed. You didn't. Because you never bothered to ask. Margaret pushed past both of us, dragging her suitcases. This is far from over, she hissed at me. Derek, you call me when you come to your senses. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. Margaret, you should know that I've been recording our conversation tonight. Everything from, pack your bags to, this is far from over. I thought it might be useful for the divorce proceedings. Her face went white. You can't do that. It's illegal. It's perfectly legal to record conversations in your own home when you feel threatened, I said calmly. I'd be happy to play it for Derek's lawyer when we discuss the terms of our divorce settlement. After they left, I stood in my quiet house, my house, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Over the next few weeks, the truth continued to unfold. Derek's lawyer tried to challenge the post-nuptial agreement, but it was ironclad. Margaret attempted to claim she'd been contributing to household expenses and deserved compensation, but I had bank records showing that every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every property tax installment had come from my accounts. The divorce was finalized within 2 months. Derek got half of our savings account, half of our investment portfolio, and his car. I kept the house, my business, and my self-respect. 3 months later, I was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as one of the top 50 international business leaders under 40. The article detailed how I'd built Meridian Strategic Consulting from a one-person home office operation into a multi-million-dollar firm with clients on 5 continents. Derek saw the article. I know because he sent me a text message. I saw the magazine cover. I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I'm sorry I couldn't see it when it mattered. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 6 months after the divorce, I was having dinner with my sister when she asked if I ever regretted how things ended with Derek. Do you mean, do I regret discovering that my husband was planning to evict me from my own house? I asked. Or do I regret finding out that he valued his mother's opinion more than his wife's accomplishments? I mean, do you regret not trying harder to save the marriage? She clarified. I thought about it for a moment. I regret that I spent 3 years dimming my own light to make Derek feel more comfortable. I regret that I let Margaret poison our relationship with her constant criticism and manipulation. But I don't regret standing up for myself when they tried to steal everything I'd worked for. Do you think Derek regrets it? I pulled out my phone and showed her the latest text message I'd received from him. Amanda, I know I don't deserve a response, but I wanted you to know that I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to understand how I let my mother manipulate me into destroying the best thing in my life. I hope someday you can forgive me. He sends messages like this every few weeks, I told my sister. Apologies, explanations, promises to be better. How do you feel about that? I feel like he's 3 years too late, I said. He had countless opportunities to support me, to celebrate my success, to choose our marriage over his mother's schemes. He chose differently every single time. And now? I looked around the restaurant where we were dining. A place I'd chosen because one of my clients had recommended it. A place I could afford because my business was thriving, a place where I felt comfortable and confident and free. Now I'm building something bigger than Derek ever imagined possible, I said. I'm expanding into 3 new markets, hiring a team of associates, and looking at office space in downtown. I'm too busy creating my future to waste time regretting my past. A year later, Meridian Strategic Consulting had grown to 15 employees and partnerships with companies in 18 countries. I moved the business out of my home office and into a sleek downtown space with conference rooms equipped for international video calls and a staff that spoke 7 languages collectively. I also sold the Victorian house, too many memories, too much space for one person, and bought a modern penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. It was beautiful, efficient, and entirely mine. Derek reached out one final time when he saw the news about my company's expansion in the business section of the newspaper. He called instead of texting, and for some reason I answered. "Amanda," he said, his voice hesitant. "I saw the article about your new office. 15 employees? That's incredible." "Thank you," I said politely. "I wanted to tell you that I've been going to therapy like I mentioned in my text. I'm starting to understand how wrong I was about everything. About you, about your work, about what really mattered. I'm glad you're getting help, Derek. My therapist says I have issues with successful women, that I was threatened by your achievements without even realizing it. She says my mother encouraged those feelings because she saw you as competition for my attention. That sounds like something you should have figured out before you tried to evict me from my own house." There was a long pause. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid and insecure to appreciate it. Derek," I said gently, "I hope you find happiness. I hope you learn from this experience and become a better partner for whoever comes next. But that person isn't going to be me." "I know," he said quietly. "I just needed to tell you that you were right about everything. Your work was important. Your success was real. You deserved a husband who celebrated your achievements instead of feeling threatened by them." After I hung up, I stood at my office window looking out at the city where my business was thriving, where my reputation was growing, where my future was bright with possibility. The woman Derek had tried to cast aside, the one his mother had dismissed as a mere freelance consultant, had built something extraordinary. And she'd done it without their approval, without their support, and ultimately without their presence in her life. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's simply succeeding so spectacularly that the people who tried to diminish you are forced to confront the magnitude of their mistake. I'd given Derek and Margaret exactly what they'd asked for: my absence from their lives. What they hadn't counted on was discovering that my absence would reveal the true cost of what they'd thrown away. But that was their loss to bear, not mine.